Of Metro's Board of Rules and Appeals, Bert Warshaw, told an informal meeting of the Metro Commission this morning that, as a rule, pride in workmanship in the Dade construction industry doesn't seem to exist. Building department officials, too, were in on the courthouse meeting, where Channel 4 is not on the Blueprint series, and the problems it has focused on were among items discussed. One consequence was that the county attorney was asked to draw up an ordinance that, if passed, would take public employees off the Board of Rules and Appeals and replace them with laymen. As for Not on the Blueprint, Mayor Jack Orr says he's impressed.
Public service. I believe that any time you turn the searchlight of public opinion on the governmental process, you do a service to everyone, including the government. And I believe the series is going to have its impact on our procedures. First step was taken today. I think we've had a sort of attitude in our whole community, and it's particularly affected this industry, where developers have sought to include the largest amount of space for the smallest dollar. Little attention has been given to quality, and little attention has been given to aesthetics. I hope that we can bring about some changes in this general attitude, and series such as yours make a contribution toward that end. And then I think that the industry, including the contractors and the building trades unions, have a responsibility here. I think the building trades unions could do a great deal toward improving the quality of workmanship if they would go back to the old days of pride and that kind of thing, and they're establishing some standards of quality.
Mayor Orr added that he would back proposals to strengthen the South Florida Building Code and to beef up the county's inspection force.
The mayor learned that when dirty restaurants were exposed to the glare of television publicity, they quickly cleaned up. A similar situation has developed where our cameras have spotlighted bad construction in Not on the Blueprint. And Bob has another case in point.
Ralph, back on August 23rd, we reported on the shoddy workmanship and building code violations apparent at the La Lisa condominium at West 77th Street and 10th Avenue in Hialeah. One day later, work on that job was halted when it was learned that the general contractor, Clearview Corporation, wasn't licensed to build in that city. Well, now the contractor has a license, and under the supervision of structural engineers, repairs have begun. 3 weeks ago, even a layman could tell that there was something very wrong with La Lisa. Several main beams were sagging badly in the middle, and where one second-level walkway met another, the difference in elevation was a good 2 inches. At the time, inspectors also termed the building's blockwork poor. But the most serious violation at La Lisa, and the one that appeared with the most frequency, was poor concrete work, officially called honeycombing. Beams and columns are weakened by this condition, and in many spots it was very bad, with steel reinforcement rods at surface levels and exposed. Today, we took another look at La Lisa, along with Hialeah's building department director, Earl Crooks, and the look indeed was different. Those sagging beams have been reformed and straightened with a process called gunniting. That walkway has been repoured and leveled up, and workmen have further chipped away at areas where concrete was poor, all in preparation for this. This is what's called gunniting, the correct way to remedy voids in concrete with bad honeycombing and exposed steel. The muddy material is not just concrete.
Actually, your gunite is a much stronger mixture. It's put in under tremendous force. It's blown in there under air pressure. It's a very rich sand-cement mixture that, as it's blown in, most of your cement will stick and your sand will rebound. A goodly portion of your sand will rebound. And actually, a test on gunite would come out probably twice as strong as the normal test on the concrete that it's replacing or that it's being blown in against. With everybody watching it, I'm sure that the building will be as good as it was designed to be, and it will be a very attractive structure because it's going to be under full supervision from here on out.
Crooks adds that poor blockwork in the building will be fixed up with a special spray-on stucco process that fills up spaces between the blocks. Incidentally, La Lisa owner Freddie Castro says that correcting the violations and poor workmanship in his condominium is costing him in the vicinity of $14,000 to $15,000. But as we learn again, if it's caught in time, it can be done. Ralph?
Tonight, and Bob Mayer has some more good news.
Right, Ralph. We return today to another condominium development where just a few weeks ago, not on the blueprint, uncovered numerous examples of poor workmanship and building code violations. This time it was the Snapper Creek townhouses at 11301 Sunset Drive, and we are happy to report that things now are looking up. On August 28th, while inspectors said there was no structural danger at Snapper Creek, they halted much of the work out there, citing examples of sloppiness which they said the Metro Building Department could not accept. It, of course, cannot accept block work with mortar missing between the joints because that is a violation of the building code. And the department cannot accept badly honeycombed concrete beams and slabs, especially where debris was left in the forms. These too are violations, as were the scores of areas at Snapper Creek where steel in beams was exposed. Eventually, a situation like this can cause cracking in a building. But a visit to Snapper Creek townhouses today showed that many of the block and concrete violations found 3 weeks ago have been corrected, and repairs are continuing. Crews are going from building to building, fixing cracked blocks and filling up spaces that were left between many of them the first time. Bad beams have also been patched up, as with the blocks, not just stuccoed over. Metro's construction control supervisor, Tom Black, explains the situation.
Well, they are applying a grout, a high-strength grout. After they clean the surface and put a bonding agent on there, they do apply this grout material.
Which is what, concrete?
It actually is a high-strength cementatious material. It is concrete. And when they're finished, the beam and block work will be, in fact, stronger than it would have been initially if it had been just the grout applied.
Are you satisfied with the adequacy and the speed with which the repairs are being made?
Yes, they are proceeding properly. They have a registered engineer that is offering guidance as well as the building department. And when they're finished, the job will be proper and quite safe.
Incidentally, the subcontractor in charge of block laying at Snapper Creek at the time of our first report has been fired and replaced. And an official of the general contractor, Carroll Housing, said today that the effect of not on the blueprint has been to keep everybody on their toes and to improve workmanship. Ralph?
Come on in today.
In the city of North Miami, it's not the buildings that are falling apart, but rather the building department. Bob Mayer has details as his Not on the Blueprint series continues.
Ralph, it appears just a matter of time before the building department in the city of North Miami is stripped of most of its powers. That action seems inevitable after revelations today by North Miami Mayor John Stembridge indicating serious irregularities in the department. In an exclusive interview with Channel 4 and the Greater Miami Journal, Stembridge told of a building department that has no plumbing inspector and thus cannot give plumbing inspections. The structural inspector, says the mayor, has been on vacation for a month, and to top it all off, there is no chief official in charge of the department, no one to legally sign permits.
Well, I'm saying that our chief building official, I was informed by our finance department this morning, has not been with us since June, I believe, 23rd of this year. So he's been the one that's been qualifying the department.
Despite the fact that Sidney Markwell is no longer employed by the city of North Miami as chief building official, Stembridge says Markwell's signature allegedly is still showing up on official documents.
Well, it means that someone is using his name to grant certificates of occupancy to buildings.
What are you proposing to do now in the wake of these revelations?
Well, I'm calling Dade County Code Enforcement into North Miami, and I want them first of all to look into our building department and to tell me exactly what is wrong, if there is something wrong with our present setup.
Mayor, from what you have just told me, you no longer have a building official here assigned to your building department, as well as qualified inspectors. So in fact, you have no building department. So you should cease and desist from issuing building permits, from issuing occupancy certificates, until such a time as you have your building department properly reorganized with competent people to carry on the building code.
Lund calls the situation an emergency and adds that after official notice, his enforcement division can move in to help out, but only for a brief period. He advises, and Mayor Stembridge agrees, that the Dade County Building Department should be called in to temporarily take over the North Miami Building Division until the current crisis is over. Ralph? More than 4 weeks ago, Metro's Code Enforcement Division had all work halted at the Inka condominium at West 60th Street and 17th Avenue in Hialeah. At the time, a Dade Building Department official said that structurally the Inka was about the worst he'd ever seen. There were scores of examples of poor workmanship and building code violations, but the thing that concerned experts most was the slipshod manner in which the concrete slabs and main supporting beams had been poured. The concrete had all kinds of debris in it. Steel was exposed virtually everywhere, and it appeared that some of the beams beneath the steel were actually a bit hollow. It seems they were, but it's all being corrected now, as Metro's Chief Code Enforcement Officer explains.
Well, Bob, the gunite people here and the engineers in charge of the repair work, they have had all of the loose concrete chipped out from the underside of the beams. They have exposed the steel that just had a little covering of concrete on it, and now they're going through the gunite process, which is high pressure discharging of concrete into the underside of the beam under pressure, supervised by an engineer and also by the building official of Hialeah. He's seeing that this is being done properly, and these beams, when they have been completed, will be in accordance with the South Florida Building Code and up to strength.
Needless to say, while long-range results of general poor workmanship at the Inka cannot be predicted, there at least now will be no question as to structural safety. But it took public exposure of the problem to assure that, the shutdown of a job and a loss to developer Orlando Mendez, that didn't have to happen.
Well, Bob, this work stoppage has cost the contractor a tremendous amount of money in construction interest alone, plus the fact that he is spending money now for repairs. A little bit more time during the original construction could have been money well spent. It would have saved him all of this money in the long run.
On the brighter side, as we'll hear more about next week, contractors apparently are becoming more aware of workmanship with a good result. We've covered a lot of stories on Not on the Blueprint, but tonight's, well, let's just say it's about the most unusual yet. It involves a developer, Seligman Southeast Incorporated, but this time no one is accusing anyone of poor workmanship or violating the building code. Tonight's story is about a $60,000 home at 2595 Southwest 115th Avenue. It's a nice new home mortgaged by J.I. Kislak Mortgage Company and occupied for only 3 weeks by Mr. and Mrs. Carlos Gonzalez. Trouble is, Alvin and Jackie Rose say the land on which the new house was built belongs to them. The Roses say and offer proof that the builder, Seligman Southeast, should have built on the vacant lot next door, Lot 33, but by mistake, mix-up, or whatever, built on Lot 34, which belongs to the Roses. The construction apparently all took place while the Rose family was on an extended summer cruise. They got the shock of their lives on returning when a prospective buyer inquired about that property.
So I said, well, if we can make a deal, perhaps, we can work it out. So he asked me for my legals and he could see my lots. About 2 days later, he calls me back that there's a house on one of the lots that I'd given him a legal description. Legal description. So we had it surveyed, and sure enough, the house is on my lot. Fully and completely, totally 100%. It's unbelievable.
How could that happen?
I don't know. There's been a mortgage put on it, a builder's built on it, it's been surveyed, and I just don't know.
Carlos and Mirtha Gonzalez had their housewarming only last night. They were stunned on hearing the news and said they knew nothing of the mistake. Believe it or not, attorney Max Pianick says the Roses legally own the Gonzalez home.
Yes, they do, Bob. They, under Florida common law,
an owner of property owns any improvements which are constructed on that property, and the people who may have built the improvements have no right to take the improvements off of the land.
Now, realistically, though, what's going to happen? There are people living in the house. Are you going to push for that to get the house for your clients?
I don't believe so.
Perhaps just switching lots? Is that a possibility?
That is definitely a possibility. I believe the roses have been damaged to some extent, so it won't be an even swap, but we're going to try and remedy this to make everybody as happy as possible.
As for how all this could have happened, Pionic says part of the blame may lie with the initial surveyor and part with the mortgage company, which he says should have performed a spot check before construction began. The builder, Seligman Southeast, had only a terse no comment for us when asked about this most graphic, not on the blueprint incident.
From the Yankee Clipper Hotel in Fort Lauderdale. Ralph?
Bob Mayer and his latest series are about to take a break. And Bob has an overview this evening of Not on the Blueprint.
While we'll continue to keep our eye on the building situation in Dade and report when necessary, Not on the Blueprint ends tonight as a regular feature. After 8 weeks of reporting on and filming vivid examples of poor workmanship in construction and serious building code violations, we feel the public has been made sufficiently aware of the problem. Corrective measures rest with local lawmakers, and several proposals are now being considered as a result of Not on the Blueprint. But there have already been other, more tangible results, as Metro's Chief Code Enforcement Officer Rudy Lund explains.
Term basis, as you have already seen, some jobs had to be closed down and immediate action taken to correct some of the violations that were exposed in your series. And I'm referring particularly to the ones where reinforcing steel was exposed, which could possibly be considered a very dangerous item.
Is the message getting through, do you think?
I think the message is getting through. I think in the areas of and with the contractors that the series have shown some of these mistakes, they definitely are showing improvement, and they're catching this stuff immediately. And I think that in the long run, that your series will have a good effect on construction.
While some persons are of the belief that good workmanship can't be legislated, the Metro Commission will soon be looking into the possibility of moving specific and flagrant examples of shoddy work into the code violation category. And as another result of Not on the Blueprint, Metro Mayor Jack Orr and other commissioners say they will support proposals to beef up Dade's building department, which is severely understaffed. All in all, we hope that this series has been a benefit to this community. Our consumer series concept started with Not on the Menu, about restaurant sanitation, evolved into Not on the Blueprint, and will move still further ahead into our third series, scheduled to begin in about 2 weeks. All we can say about it now is that the new series is bound to directly affect each and every person living in South Florida. Ralph?
We look forward to that one, Bob. Here's a follow-up on the Not on the Menu. The Chinese Village restaurant at 5958 South Dixie Highway closed 2 days ago by Dade health officials because of potentially dangerous sanitary code violations, was allowed to reopen today.
From now until the end of November, South Florida stands a 1 in 7 chance of getting hit by a hurricane. And even though you can look out your window this week and see bright skies and pretty beaches, now is the time you should begin taking stock of how ready you are if a hurricane should hit our area. Before Hurricane David hit South Florida last Labor Day week,